Hey everyone, I'm out here in Palm Springs, California with this 2020 Mazda CX-30. So the CX-30 is an all-new vehicle for Mazda. It's an all-new nameplate, and it slots in between the CX-5, which is considered a compact, and the CX-3, which is considered a subcompact. So the CX-30 kind of splits the subcompact segment into two sub-segments, if you will. So I think you would call this a larger subcompact SUV. Anyway, why is it called the CX-30, you might ask, instead of the obvious name, which would be CX-4? Well, Mazda will tell you that that's because they already sell a vehicle called the CX-4 in foreign markets. But what I think is that CX-30 signifies what will ultimately be a new SUV naming scheme for Mazda. I think down the road, this vehicle will replace the CX-3, and that will then see the next generation CX-5 referred to as the CX-50, the next CX-9 will be the CX-90, and so forth. But that's just my guess. But Mazda's official word on that is that, well, there was already a vehicle called the CX-4, so they had to pick something else for this thing. Anyway, I've been driving this thing all day. I've enjoyed driving it. Like most other Mazda products, it's kind of upscale. It's a little nicer than what you get with a run-of-the-mill economical subcompact SUV. So why don't I give you a little tour of it? We'll start on the exterior and then move on to the interior, and then I will share my thoughts about the new CX-30. Starting up front here, and there's really no mistaking this thing for a Mazda. It's got the signature Mazda front end with the trapezoidal shaped grille. You can see it's got this chrome design element that kind of frames the lower half of the grille and then extends on into the headlights. The headlights themselves are really thin, which is a trait of modern Mazda design, and they've got this circular element in them. You'll notice that there's another pair of lights down here on the chin, and those are actually the turn signals. Anyway, moving on to the side, and one of the notable design elements of the CX-30, and I have to say I don't really like it, is this really thick cladding right here. It helps the design from some angles, I guess. I just don't really like it, and I think it kind of cheapens the vehicle. But either way, you can see that it starts up front here, so this is all black plastic, and then you get this really thick plastic fender flare. Then it extends along the bottom of the doors and on the rocker panel. There it is again, around the rear wheel well. And then it continues all the way back here, so this is all black plastic as well. It doesn't look as bad as some black plastic cladding, and I think the fact that Mazda's design language is really, really nice helps. But I have to say, I don't love it. And there are some golfers, because I am filming this right in front of a golf course. Anyway, chrome trim around the greenhouse there. Greenhouse is really sleek, really swoopy. This is a top-of-the-line, I believe it's premium package model. So those are the biggest wheels that you can get. You can see that with the CX-30 and the new Mazda 3, Mazda's introduced a new emblem font. I'm probably the only one that will recognize that, but either way, SkyActiv G badge. I know Mazda has their new engine technology that's supposed to be really, really fuel efficient, but that's not what's in this vehicle. It just has their regular 2.5 liter four-cylinder. It's not a new engine. It's paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission. It's not a new transmission. But either way, it's a decent powertrain that makes good power. A little more power out of this thing than what you get in most subcompact SUVs. Moving on to the cargo area, and like I mentioned, this is a premium package model, so it's got a power rear tailgate. One thing Mazda pointed out in their presentation this morning is that the rear opening for this thing is a lot bigger than the opening in the CX-3, so that should help with loading and unloading cargo. I've got my duffel bag and a backpack back here for scale, and you can see that space back here is okay. You could probably fit 2 more duffel bags and 2 more backpacks back here of this size. So decent space, on par with what you get in bigger subcompact SUVs. There's also a cargo cover here, which is nice, so that when you have the hatch closed and you walk away from your vehicle, nobody can see what's inside. Power tailgate button's up here. You can also lock it at a certain level via this little button to the left there. So we'll go ahead and close that and move on to the interior. Okay, so top premium spec model has a white interior in this case. There's also a blue interior that you can get. Overall, I really like Mazda's cabins. They're really open and airy, and like I've mentioned, they have a lot of premium materials, premium design. Really nice place to spend some time. We'll hop in and close the door. So I mentioned white seats, but there's also brown leather and a lot of black too. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this thing on. Okay, materials test here on the door. This is a soft, it's kind of a rubbery plastic. It's actually kind of hard to describe. It doesn't feel sticky like rubber, but it doesn't feel hard like plastic. Overall, it's a nice material. It's maybe not what you'd find on an Audi or a German luxury car, but it definitely doesn't feel cheap. Moving on, this is a really interesting material. It extends from the door panel along the top of the dash over onto the other door panel there. And while it looks like leather, it's made to look like leather, it's actually rubber. And it's actually, if you feel it, listen, it's actually sticky. I know that you're not often reaching onto the dashboard of your car and massaging it like I am right here, but I was really surprised to find the way this material felt. It looks like stitching. That is actually thread in there, but that's not. It's not stitched together. It's just a rubber piece that was molded to look like leather. It's kind of clever. I don't mind it. It's more intriguing than anything. But yeah, it's kind of shiny. It's kind of sticky. It's soft touch. You can see I'm squeezing the gauge cluster hood there. Soft touch. And one more thing, just below this rubber material here is this soft touch, almost pad on the dashboard here. And I want to point it out because it's like really soft touch. It's almost pillowy. I have to kind of think they should have used thicker foam underneath, because you press it and you can kind of just almost put imprints in it. The leather feels nice, or whatever this material is feels nice, but the foam underneath is just some of the squishiest foam that I've ever seen used on the dashboard of a vehicle. Yeah, there you go. You can put wrinkles in it. Yeah. I don't know. I think they should have used thicker foam. Otherwise, you get real leather right here. Leather on the center console armrest. Obviously a leather-wrapped steering wheel. It feels good. This is Mazda's new steering wheel design that I believe debuted with the new Mazda 3. Fully digital, well, not quite fully digital, but this is a screen right here. So everything that you see within this gauge is actually electronic. And then these are old school mechanical gauges on either side of it here. Moving on, the steering wheel controls are laid out nicely. You also get paddle shifters. On the left here, this button controls the active safety features. It turns them off. They default to on, but if you don't want them, or if they're overreacting in your opinion, you can turn them off via this button here. And then here's a new thing that's exclusive to Mazda's SUVs, is this off-road traction mode button that better distributes power to the rear wheels when you're off-road. Moving on, Mazda's infotainment systems are operated via this dial here on the center console. Now, in previous generation Mazda products, the infotainment screen was a touchscreen, but it only functioned when the vehicle was stationary. Moving forward, though, with this new generation of infotainment systems, they are actually no longer touchscreens, so you need to control them exclusively via this dial right here. It's finished in chrome. The black plastic feels really high quality. Here's your audio volume and on, off, track, skip ahead, skip back controls, and then a favorites button right here. Just like in the past, you get a sport mode for the automatic transmission here. Nothing too revolutionary. Moving on, this is another design element. A lot of similarities with the Mazda 3 here, and I'll get to that in a minute. But these are your passenger side air vents. You can see that the driver air vents are on either side of the instrument cluster here. But for the passenger, they're this long rectangular piece. And these are actually air vents. And then in the middle here, this is just a design element that serves to bring the two vents together visually. It's kind of interesting. Then when you look up close to it, though, it's kind of industrial looking. And one more thing here that I noticed about the CX-30's interior. You've got this glove box here. And the way it opens is via this lever that you pull to the left. But watch what happens when I pull it. Watch how violent this is. So what's happening there is that it's a damped lowering. So I'll just push it back up, and it's made to lower very slowly. But I think that this functionality should be paired with a button release so that you press it and then you take your hand off of it and it slowly drops down. That would be really nice. But what they've done here is put this lever that has you already pulling on the glove box. So when you pull it, oh, that worked. But when you pull it as you think it should work, it snaps back up there. It's just not, it's not quite pleasant. Anyway, just a little thing I noticed. Door handle pulls are kind of cool. They are extensions of this chrome piece here. So you just pull on them there to open the door. And yeah, that about covers the driver area here. If you've been in a new Mazda 3, or if you've watched a new Mazda 3 review, if you've watched my new Mazda 3 review, which I will link to in the description, this interior is going to feel really familiar to you. It's nothing revolutionary, nothing groundbreaking. It's typical Mazda quality and Mazda design, which is a good thing, but otherwise it's pretty familiar in here. Let's hop in the back seat and see how much room is back there. Okay, climbing into the back here. And I have the seat in the position it would be in if I were behind the wheel. And I'm about 5'10", 5'11". So you can see not a ton of room back here. Like I said, while it's on the bigger side for its segment, it's still a subcompact SUV, so you're not going to get a ton of space in the second row. You can see there's decent room for my feet. You can kind of fit your toes under the rear seat supports there, but really, there's actually a lot of room under this seat. Surprising amount of room under this seat. That helps to make it feel a little bit bigger back here, but overall, you know, it's definitely a subcompact SUV. Otherwise, not much else to go over here. Door panels are similar to the way they are up front, although that unique rubber material on the front door panels is replaced by this actually hard plastic here in the second row. You do get second row air vents. There's a light up here, although you can't control it from back here. And other than that, that's about it. Armrest, home to 2 cup holders, always convenient. There's a map pocket behind the passenger seat, but not behind the driver's seat, you'll notice. Perforated leather, child seat supports back here, 2 sets of them. So easy enough to install a child seat back here. You've got your grab handles, and yeah, that's about it. There is a sunroof in this thing, like I said, premium package, so it has a sunroof. Back in the front seat, and here's a look at the window sticker. Like I said, this is a first drive event for this vehicle, so we don't have an official window sticker that shows price. That said, I know that this thing, as equipped and that's fully loaded, comes in at a little bit over $31,000, and that's pretty much par for the course for the subcompact segment. Anyway, you'll see this one has all-wheel drive. It is a 2020 CX-30 with premium package and all-wheel drive. It's in this polymetal gray metallic, which is a new color for Mazda, and it has the white leather interior. I did want to mention that it's all-wheel drive, so for context, when we look at this fuel economy here, 25 city, 32 highway, and 27 combined. That's decent. Anyway, moving on, you do get a little more standard horsepower in this thing compared to other subcompact SUVs. 186 horsepower, 186 pound-feet of torque. So this one has 18-inch wheels. You've got an array of active safety features, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, heated seats, a sunroof. Pretty well equipped. And like I said, no pricing on this window sticker, although I can tell you, based on the online configurator, this CX-30, as equipped, would come in at around $31,000. As for my take on the CX-30, it's basically a Mazda 3 hatchback with a raised up suspension and a slightly higher up seating position. So as you know, the Mazda 3 is all new for 2019, and with that redesign, Mazda took to introducing a new steering wheel, a new infotainment system, a lot of new switchgear, slightly tweaked design language, some new materials, and so forth. And the CX-30 really just takes all of that and applies it to a slightly different form factor. Like the Mazda 3 hatchback, you can get this thing with all-wheel drive. Obviously, it's an SUV. It has decent cargo space. It has a rear hatch opening. It's really similar to the new Mazda 3 hatch. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, because the Mazda 3 hatch is a really great vehicle. What you get from this one that's different than that vehicle, you get a slightly higher ride height. I haven't compared the two, but you get, I assume, a little bit more cargo area out of the CX-30. And then I guess you just get a little bit more commanding position over traffic on the road. But other than that, it's a new, different application of the next generation of Mazda vehicles. The new Mazda 3 is the first example of a new generation of Mazda products, and the CX-30 is now a second example of the new generation of Mazdas. So overall, great product. Like most Mazdas, I think there's a lot of value here in that you get a mild luxury car experience at an economy car price. It drives nicely. I spent couple hours today driving this thing from San Diego to Palm Springs, where I'm at now, and I can say that the 186 horsepower is plenty. Handles nicely like most Mazdas. Things like noise, vibration, and harshness in this vehicle I think have been reduced a little bit more than they are in your average economy car. So things like that are what you get with Mazda that you might not get with a competing product. So overall, the new CX-30, I have to give it a thumbs up, but if you've been in a new Mazda 3 hatchback, this thing's gonna feel pretty familiar to you. One more thing while I drive home here and keep my eyes focused squarely on the road. In their presentation this morning, Mazda showed us what they expect their sales breakdown to be in the coming years now that they've introduced the CX-30. And something that I found really interesting is that their graphic, and this was rough estimates of sales figures, so there were really no numbers involved here. They just showed it proportionate to other vehicles in their lineup. They showed sales of the CX-3 shrinking down to like nothing, and they also showed sales of the Mazda 3 shrinking a lot, and they then showed sales of the CX-30, this vehicle, pretty much taking over all of those sales. So that's why I think this thing's ultimately going to supplant the CX-3 in Mazda's lineup. And according to Mazda, and according to me, I think that this will probably become the best-selling Mazda vehicle in the next year or two, because it really hits on, everybody wants SUVs these days. The compact segment has always been the most popular segment, and this thing is a good mix of all of those characteristics. I'm in Palm Springs. Look at this SL. Woo! Nice. Anyway, yeah, interesting tidbit.